you're not going to become a post-nation state. You'll become Americans before we allow Canada to form a federal life. It's a sure it is. People are, and I find this fascinating, and you can talk about this. They're Canadians, so many Canadians, they have this deep hatred towards America and American people, which I don't, as a Polish, I don't understand. Because it looks like to me, they do not understand that it's partly because of American armed forces, American military, and Canada exists as a nation. If it was not for American protection, we would be taken over. Canadians do not have a deep hatred of Americans. Most of us are related to Americans. My grandmother was American and came to Canada, was originally from Ireland, came to Canada, then the U.S., then Canada and homestead in Saskatchewan, and we have all kinds of shared cultural affinity. We don't hate Americans, but what's happening in this last 20 years is the representation that we hate Americans. The 15 years, the politicians, and the media, and we don't. There's incredible affinity. The Canada that I grew up in, we used to play football and rugby north to south on this continent, more than east to west. We played with American high schools. So we don't hate Americans. In fact, they're our brothers. It's just that it's being represented now with Trump, because Trump is opposing this globalist, post-national race. We're wanting to portray the American president as orange man bad, and therefore the Americans are bad. Well, you know what? I'll tell you, the only thing that's really stabilizing Canada right now is the fact that America is sitting there, not moving to engage a post-national threat that is being hosted in Canada. And I'll tell you, in relation to my conversations with any American intelligence infrastructure that I've come across, they look at Canada and they say Canada is becoming a destabilizing threat to our northern border. And they're saying, and whatever you believe, for all the people that are sitting here listening to this conversation, I have a pretty clear perspective in my mind that there are foreign troops in our country. Many people believe that. Many people have seen them. I can kind of get my mind around 200,000 Chinese troops being in this country. We had them in Alberta flying jets in Alberta. We had them in the north being trained military from China. I'm sure they're in British Columbia being trained over there as well. And I'll tell you, whatever we believe is the case in terms of the number of value of Chinese troops, the Americans believe there's 500,000. So it really doesn't matter what you and I believe or someone else is watching the show. That's what the Americans think. And in addition to that, they're looking and saying, what have you begun to post in Canada in terms of sleeper Islamic cells that could be destabilizing threats to Canada, or has been proliferate? Because there's thousands of them that cross the border uncaught with Americans already. So America actually sees us as a vulnerability to continental security, and I think that they're watching very closely to see when is actually Canada going to topple, and are we going to need to consolidate this continent, because they are not prepared to allow to have China 2 miles across the border. And I'll tell you what, if you really want to play out the geopolitics on this, and I don't know what your people normally are listening to and have your conversations, but if you actually scenario play out or game theory out that kind of a confrontation, Canada is actually in a position of becoming akin to the Ukraine in terms of a proxy politics that's going on in the world between the globalist agenda. The Canadian Ukraine. Well, it's time to start getting real about some of these conversations. And the problem that what I see is we do not have strong leadership. I'm talking about all the parties that still need strong leadership to oppose the globalist agenda, because those people are part of the globalist agenda. Donald Trump is unique because he is his own, right? For which he will, he is Donald Trump. He loves America. Deep. There is this deep appreciation of love to America, because America gave the opportunity to make that huge wealth that he has, his family, which I met a number of times. They're very kind be strong. And you're right, Canada has become a threat to the national security of the USA. And it seems it's not stopping because we do not have strong leadership. If that was a strong opposition party, not one of the unique party, because they were all the same, right, in my opinion, then certain things would not happen because they would be doing watch hard, they would be watching what is happening. Like in the past number of years when you have the same people doing exactly the same thing. For example, you we're witnessing the dress up game. And I told you those are political actors. It's a Hollywood production. So those people are playing the game of dress up for Ukraine, dress up for the Muslims, dress up for this, dress up for that, dress up for Hindus. And you got all the politicians, our premier, playing a dress up. They have the Walnut Yards going to different temples and mosques. You got Bill Parliament playing the same thing. Colors for Ukraine, colors for the Muslims, colors for the Hindus. You got the Prime Minister doing the same thing. Those people, in my opinion, they are following the same script. It's the same thing you see in England, the same thing you see in Germany, the same thing you see in Holland, it's the same thing France is doing. So you've got some sinister glow that has set that book. You talk about your book. I think they have a whole little book. And it's like chapter by chapter, they are told to implement certain things as a whole. And I think that will them. And if we were not smart enough, I think we're going to see what France is seeing. How it is burning. For England, it's burning. For Ireland, it's burning. Germany is burning. Well, and this is part of the problem with living in a bubble. great. So we were successful in that aspect. But I want to ask you this, and I want the people to really, really pay attention to this. For the past 5 years, it was a great test of who is who in this room, if you will. And quite often when I have an opportunity to meet with a group of people, I would say this to them. If they did not march with you, if they did not stand with you, if they didn't stand for you when you needed them the most, why would you vote for those people? Why would you elect them again? In history, and I love history, when you betrayed your king, the other king you betrayed your king to would greatly reward you, but only for a season. Very quickly you will be eliminated as well. Why? Because if you are going to betray one king, what is going to stop you from betraying the other one? So my question to the people is, why would you vote and keep voting for the same parties that slaughtered your loved ones, prevented you to see your elderly, your grandmas, your mothers, your fathers, jobbed your children and are still jobbing your children? In Alberta, they are jobbing our children 6 months old, you know that? Yeah, and their accommodation is every 3 months. Children are dying right now because of what the government, the conservative government is doing to our children. So my point is very simple. If they did this to you before, you really think they're not going to continue doing the same thing to you over and over again? And what is going to take for the people to finally say, enough of the Judas Iscariot, I'll never vote for the Conservative Party, NDP, or the Liberal Party in my life. I'm going to look for a betterment. I'm going to look for someone else that led with us, marched with us, fought with us against the tyranny, and risked everything for the freedom, for liberties, for life. I remember during the time I was asking questions. Where are our representatives? Where is the opposition party? Where is Pierre Poilievre? Where is one of those heroes in Parliament that I watched for a number of years opposing the Liberal Party? Well, they were nowhere to be found. You know, in the comments from time to time, I want to hear people say, why don't we go donuts and coffee to the doctors? Seriously? If that's the definition of a hero, my God, dude, there's no. He did it, politics. He played the same game of politics, but when we needed them the most, he betrayed us. Do you know, Ron, that to this day we have political prisoners, political dissidents in prison? Right here, in Alberta, that pastors are still being imprisoned. To this day, 2025, I think that they still fight for their lives. I'm still in courts. I'm still fighting. I was just offered by a judge $17,000. Today I had a conversation with a lawyer. I have to come with $17,000 to give to those traitors and betrayal, Judas Iscariot. So, if they did not march with you, why would you support an organization that failed the test? Well, this is the conundrum that Canada finds itself, and I think that's probably part of the reason why it's social taboo to bring up conversations like the vaccine, or why it was illegal in Alberta in so many places to buy the flag on your car after the convoy. And we have ISO and colonized police stockpiling brochures in Calgary, Alberta, for having a Canadian flag. Later on, if you listen to Pierre Poilievre's recent, I tweeted on this, you listen to Pierre Poilievre's recent CBC interview, he's celebrating how loyal Central Albertans are because they have the Canadian flag up, and yet where was he when we were being ticketed for having the flag on our vehicles when the podcast was filtered, or post the return of the convoy to Alberta? And that's when things unfolded, as you well know. So it's just there's a desire for conservative Western Canadian conservatives to have short memories, because when you talk to them privately, they're not at all happy independence because Alberta independence is the beachhead for freedom for all the Canadians. And I'll tell you what, we have legislation that was given to us by the British, the 1931 Westminster Act. A lot of people now have already, in the last 6 months, been trained to think that that's an irrelevant piece of legislation. That was a piece of legislation that was passed by the British who basically severed their sovereignty of the British Crown over the Dominion of Canada and passed it to the people in the provinces. Okay? And then the idea was that those provinces that would then meet together and set up a constitutional structure within the province to decide how they wanted to be ruled and regulated in the province. And I've heard Alberta, in Alberta in the last month, people, lawyers, say that the 1931 Westminster Act is blackberry, quote, that it's blackberry. And my challenge for any of those people to think that the Westminster Act is irrelevant to this discussion about true freedom. Smith so much. Because what she's doing right now,
No, not her. Fuck that bitch.
finished with that from the boundary, and it's coming from Jack. What makes you guys think that you are any different than Maxine Bergen? Yes, that's the question. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm born in Alberta. I'm showing up in Alberta from Quebec, trying to sell a nationalist agenda in relation to Western Canada. I'm here. I'm here because I believe ultimately it's going to see growth of the law.